We are live. Thanks everyone for joining yet another episode of It All Depends podcast, the show where we share tactical and actionable insights for customer success managers. I'm your host, Prash, and I'm again stoked to have you joining us today. So my guest today, he has a ton of experience, almost 18-year journey in customer-facing roles. And this year itself, he was recognized as one of the top 100 customer success strategists, and he was always also nominated as one of the most creative customer success leaders in 23 and 24. And he's also the founder of Customer Success Middle East, so he's doing great things for the customer success community there. Alqaq, thank you so much for being on the show. It's so good to have you. How are you?
Thank you. Hi, Prash. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I'm honored to be invited to your podcast. It's a pleasure, and thank you for the great introduction. It's too much. I'm very passionate about customer success, and for me, it's I'm doing what I love, and I love what I'm doing. So
Awesome.
the combination is there. So that's
the perfect combo.
What keeps me motivated every day.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thanks again for taking our time to do this. I'm sure folks are gonna learn and glean so much from the extensive experience that you bring to the table. So what do you say? Shall we get started?
Go ahead.
Perfect. So as the pod name is, it all depends. So we're gonna set up the foundation first. So I would love to kind of get to know more about the current company that you're working for, and the industry that you're in as a customer success manager, and how is the setup for the customer success org, like the onboarding, contract renewal, how is that set up?
Right. So I work in a software company, in a SaaS software company. We are specialized in data analytics software. That piece of software is very related to the industrial sector, and we mainly focus on the manufacturing and oil and gas, petrochemical companies. Anything where the time series data is our baby, so we can analyze, correlate, predict, do whatever we can do to come up with results. We go into starting from the why analysis into we reach to a prediction for a future that we can avoid problem or avoid mistake, all through data. I love data, and I believe this software is complementing my passion for data, because it brings a lot to the table. The way we are set up and the way we work, it's a kind of a different structure, because we start as a customer success. We start at the very early stage when the opportunity is there. So we work very closely with sales. Once the opportunity is there and the customer is excited to look at the software, we actually start the onboarding pre-contract. So we do
very interesting.
Yeah, so we do. It's a SaaS, so implementation is very minimal, but we do a kind of implementation and configuration. So we connect the system to their live data, and we start the onboarding pre-contract. We do the onboarding, and we do a live or a use case, or if you want to call it a POV or proof of value or proof of concept or whatever you want to call it. But we build something with the customer before the contract. 60 days, sometimes it's 90 days. That's the onboarding, the pre-contract onboarding stage.
Okay.
So it's a stage of the onboarding. And once the contract is there, then we continue with the onboarding, because that was a partial onboarding. But okay, we're already there. We proved the value, proved the concept of the software. People are buying in. They are interested to move forward. So we continue with the onboarding. So we start our job very early at the very early stage of the engagement with the customer. Then after the contract, we build an engagement plan. There is no one engagement plan for all. It depends on the customer, the sector. It all depends, the customer, the sector, the number of users, and the number of departments they want to use it, in which area they want to use it, how they want to. So it all depends on the discussion with the customer and the type of engagement we do with the customer.
Right.
Then we build our engagement plan. Usually it's an annual engagement plan, and I slice it into initiatives. Each initiative will be sliced into tasks, deliverables, objectives, and success criteria for each. That it will become like a tree map where we start to deliver against this plan.
That is super interesting, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's not usual as well.
yeah,
That's
it's not a
yeah.
typical or a standard engagement or setup with the customer, and because it's our contractual basis is
Mhm.
start from a year to 3 years. So
Okay.
we don't have the monthly. So it's an annual or a 3-year package, and it depends on the contract period. Then we build our plan, and we build the cadence of review and the business review or the executive business review, and
Right.
you name it. But it's a long-term contract, so it's a flexible in terms of getting the first win and start gradually bring more wins and more values to the customer. But you know that it's a long term and you plan your wins along the way. So it makes it easier to deliver, but it's tough when you start before the contract, because that is the challenge where you have
Yeah.
to prove in a very short period of time, which is
You
interesting.
were
And
like a sales rep as well, like because
yeah,
you are
yeah,
working so closely with them and the whole proof of concept that you need to prep for. That's very interesting. Yeah.
yeah. And usually I don't worry about renewals, because
Mhm.
it's a long-term contract. This is fair, but even if it's an annual contract, for me, renewal is an event. It's not a task. So I don't work towards the renewal, or I don't work on the renewal itself. I do my job. So the renewal is an event that will happen based on my deliverables. So my
Totally. I
focus
love
is
that
on what
perspective.
I focus on what I have to deliver in the first 9 months. So when the renewal discussion start, it's just an event that we need to just exchange paperwork and we are done.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that perspective. So,
Yeah,
but you still own the renewal, right? That it's still you owning the renewal, or is that
partially
someone
yes.
else?
Partially yes, because we have to deliver so that the renewal remain as an event.
Right.
Then sales will just process that task or that event. We are trying as much as we can as a group, as a team, not to focus on the renewal and make it as a challenge. We focus and we keep look at the challenges day after day
Hmm.
that will make the renewal a smooth event.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. And how big is your team? Because there's so much that you need to do in your role as a CSM. Like, how big is your team?
All right. So, because we are a local partner of
Hmm.
an international company, as a local partner or as a local company, we are based in Saudi Arabia, but we cover the whole Gulf area. So we are a small team, a small company, but we do a lot. So in my team we are 4, but we have multi-million dollar contracts.
Right. Right. So there's 4 CSMs, and
No,
then
it's me and if you can call them 3 CS specialists.
got you. Got you. All right. And how many customers would you say do you have in your book?
Personally, I have okay. I manage I overview all the contracts,
Mhm.
all the accounts. I have around 25,
Okay. I'm like
and
conscious of because you have 25 existing customers, but at the same time you're also supporting the sales team with that proof of concept that's ongoing, that keeps coming. Like, how do you manage that?
if you build your engagement clearly, you communicate clearly with the customer, and you make things clear, crystal clear, and you put a plan, you agree on a plan, then it will run smoothly. Sometimes there are hiccups there where you have, last week I have a
Yeah,
corporate uh, incident, but it happens. But it's not as usual that we should
right.
worry about. It's very rare where we have those incidents because we build that relation and we build that engagement in a very clear way, and it's a very planned, very structured engagement where we know where we need to be involved, we know what we have to deliver, and the customer he know what should expect from us.
Yes, setting expectation. And talking about engagement, Alkak, what does the call cadence look like for those 25 customers that you
It depends.
have?
We will keep saying it depends today. I have few customers that I have weekly.
Okay.
Weekly call, those are very strategic, and the initiative is huge initiatives which we discussed with them every year, and we just want to make sure it's a half an hour call every week just to make sure we are on the track, we're delivering, and there is no obstacles, there is no challenges, and we move on. Just a quick recap. Okay, this is what have been delivered. This is our next plan. Those are the challenges we have. Those are the obstacles, and this is what we expect. Very quick, but we keep that relation and we keep that communication because everybody will stay on the same track, on the same page, and we are moving forward.
Perfect, perfect. And this is like so good to have this context of like, okay, Alkak's setup is actually not a typical setup. So his tactical, actionable insights and strategies will be more likely kind of different from what a typical CSM would actually approach.
Yeah.
So this is like a perfect segue to have that context and then get into like, okay, so this is the setup for Alkak. What are his strategies and tactics that he implements in his day to day? So I would love to, because again, like because it's not a typical setup that you have where you're also supporting the sales, a pre-sales side of things. So you have even more things to do, Alkak. So I'm a big fan of Pareto principles on the prioritizing piece. Like, what is your 20% input that results in the 80% output? So I'm super curious to know now that, like, how do you even prioritize? Like, what is your 20% input?
Two things. Again, it depends.
Yeah,
But because in each engagement, I have my 20% and 80%. It's not the
right.
same for all engagements, but my general 20 on all accounts or all engagements is clear communication and good planning. So those will give you an opportunity to set the expectation, to put the plan, to organize it, to assign it to people or to assign it to the team who needs to deliver what and when and how, and then you are done. You just need to follow up. And if you have the time management skills, then everything is history.
Yeah. So good comms and planning. Do you mind if like giving us an example of two different customers who might have a very different, different plan and different communication style, let's say, or cadence?
Yeah. So a customer who is very interested in Zoom calls or Teams calls. They don't like emails. They don't like phone calls. They don't like those things. They like to have once a week, 30 minutes, 45 minutes call just to go over the plan, discuss, and plan for the next step. And there are some customers that, they don't prefer video calls or Zoom calls, and they just need reports. So you need to set this at the beginning. What is the communication channel you prefer? How often you want those communication? Do you want to be involved in the day-to-day ad hoc communication with the team? So because when I start, I build what we call it a stakeholder structure, a peer-to-peer structure where, okay, this is the specialist, he works with the end users. This is the manager, he works with this person. This is the
Right.
sales, works with these people. This is the finance, works with these people. So I build that structure. And for that structure, I set the communication plan. How often do you want to be involved? When? How? What channel? Do you want to be involved in a business review? Do you want to be involved in case review? And we set that expectation from day one. So that become now, it's easy. We set the expectation. We know who needs to be involved and when and how. And then we proceed with that. And once we build that metrics, we move to the engagement plan or engagement or initiatives plan. And we work with all the stakeholders to identify the challenges and how we move forward with those challenges, how they are impacting the business today, and what would happen if we fix this. What is the reflection will be on the business, day-to-day business. From there, we can measure the value. And from that value we measure, we can quantify the value. And once we deliver that line or task line, it should result in a number. And that number over the year will give me the value, the quantified value that we deliver to the customer. That's what makes our renewal smooth.
Yeah,
because
going back to that. Yes.
If you just share the number that this is the value we deliver, even if your value is saving time, because some of the things we are doing is, people at the manufacturing industry, they do a lot of reporting, but it's a time consuming. Through our platform, we can automate that and make it even very automated, auto-generated on whatever cadence you are looking for. So that is a time saving. We are not doing new things. We are not inventing a new reports. It's the same report, but instead of doing it manual, we are automating that. So it's a time saving. We calculate that time saving per transaction times the number of transactions per month, per year, per employees, per department. Then that will give me a number of hours, average costs per hour. Then it will give me how much I saved. It's important sometimes to conclude your value or your deliverables to a number, because that number, what the CFO will understand.
Exactly.
So CFO, once he see the number, he will not come back to me and say, show me the value, because the value is there.
Yeah, Roger. And so 2 questions on that. First, on the communication piece, like, do you give the customer the flexibility to decide what the cadence can look like? Is that how it works?
Yeah, okay. So usually I present, it's like a pyramid. Okay. And I put all the levels and the expected cadence. Now, there are few customers that we said, okay, in that managerial level, we do bi-weekly call. Some of the customers, they say it's too much, let's do it once a month. Some of the customers, they say, no, I want to be involved, so let's do it weekly. So we are flexible in terms of the cadence, as long as we understand the value we can bring, and we know. And some customers, we start the first 6 months on a weekly basis, and then they realize that we deliver. Whatever the cadence is, weekly, bi-weekly, we deliver, and we are working towards the plan, and we are always on the track. So they say, okay, let's move it to bi-weekly. Gotcha. So we give that flexibility to the customer to decide whether they want it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly.
That's great. I think customers would appreciate that they actually have the ownership of deciding, like, hey, how many times I want to meet you and get extract value out of this relationship.
Yeah, usually customers, they like to be engaged in those decisions, and once they are engaged, they feel that they own it. And once they own it, they will be very committed.
Correct. That's a good point.
If you force them the calls or the review calls or the cadence of the calls with the customer, they will feel like, why do I have to attend those calls? But if he decides that I want to a weekly call, then he is committed because he owns that decision.
Exactly. On the planning piece that the quantifiable facts that you have and the qualitative side of things as well, do you have some sort of like joint success plan template that you use, Alqaq, or how does that look like?
Yeah. Okay. So it's not a success plan that we follow with every customer. So our success plan is the engagement plan, because
All right.
we discuss with the customers what are the initiatives that we want to work on. And those initiatives will be translated into outcomes. And those outcomes will be now sliced into tasks, deliverables, time frame, or duration or time frame will be assigned to someone, and there will be an objectives and success criteria for each task. Now, when we slice it down into tasks, those tasks are the success plays, if you want to call it, that we own or we developed. So it's like we have a library of success plays, and we start to pick and add to those initiatives.
Okay.
So if you look at that tasks vertical in the plan, at the end or at the last row of that plan, you will be able, you will be able to define a roadmap or a plan that we're going to deliver those success plays. Those are the touch points we have, and this is the time frame, and move on. But because each customer has different requirements, different challenges, different initiatives, we cannot standardize it. We keep our plays as a success play pool, and we just pick the one that we want to implement or we want to apply on with this customer on this engagement.
Got it. So it all depends, essentially.
It all depends, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you did mention on the engagement side, which is clearly one of the skills that you're obviously good at, that really results in your performance, in those renewals. So what other skills do you think directly results in your performance as a CSM?
I always believe communication, planning, and active listening is very important. I do listen till till the customer is full. He talks like nobody else, and I just keep listening, and I listen to understand. I never listen to respond, because that's
right.
If you start to listen to respond, then your mind will be, or your brain will be busy processing that question to answer quickly. But if you just peacefully listen and get that question or comments from the customer, and a lot of time I just say, okay, I need to process it. It's my brain has a capacity, and I need to process this, and I don't mind to say that. I need to process something. I need to check something. I need to, and customer usually they appreciate that you don't give them answers left and right, and you want to really go and dig down to find the answer for them, or to give them, to bring something back to them. So listening is very important, planning and communication. Now, teamwork. I think one of the reason we are successful in our business is, whether it's an IT or sales or customer success, we work hand in hand. And usually, sometimes we don't mind to even support sales in something that has nothing to do with CSM, or sales support us sometimes with a use case or a proof of value, because he knows that customer, he knows something that very particular to that customer, and he can help us with it. So we work as a team. It's very important. We understand that by working as a team, we are bringing value to the customer, that in return it will bring us satisfaction and success story, if I want to call it. And that success story will bring us more business in the future.
Awesome. Talking about the cross-functional best practices and how working with sales and IT team, specifically for the sales team, Alqaq, what are your best practices? Because you just don't work with them for the upsell and cross-sell like the typical CSM, but you also work with them on the pre-sale side of things. So, in your experience, what have you learned is the best practice to work with sales as a CSM?
First of all, you need to build that friendship with sales. They need to be your friends. They are not your enemy, because I've seen few cases, and I've been talking to people that they just don't like to work with sales. No, I like to work with sales, because if I work with the sales and we together put a plan, or consulted with any opportunity, that okay, we have this opportunity, what do you think the best practice to go with this customer, what we need to offer them not on a commercial side, but as a proof of concept. What is the best scenario we can fit here? This customer, they have challenge in this and that, and the more you discuss with sales, the more they will fine tune their approach with the customer, the more easier will become to us when we don't do very standard handover, because as you mentioned, we start in a very early stage with sales, so we are involved and engaged in that stage or process. But we do still have a handover from sales to customer success in a few areas, and it depends on the customer again, on the contractual basis. But I think if you build that kind of relation with sales and you put a plan together on how you want to work, it's very interesting the results you will get.
Right, right. And I also see, because just now I actually thought of it, that right now the handover, like you mentioned, the handover currently for us, it looks like, okay, the sales rep is going to hand over to the onboarding specialist, and then the onboarding specialist is going to hand over to a CSM, and we are dependent on their notes. You know what I mean? So notes is all I have. And then I take that note and then I get on a call with the customer and do the discovery by myself, whatever might be lacking in that sense. But then I would imagine that you have a really good advantage where you're actually involved with the customer throughout, like pre-sales. So when it comes to like the typical CSMing, you have such a good context of the customer that you're able to service them like no other CSM would be able to.
And you
Would
have
I
a
be correct to
relation.
say that? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. Because in that pre-contract period, you build a relation with different people. Because when you start to build that proof of concept, or even before the proof of concept, when you start to the communication with the customer through the sales or with the sales, to build that understanding about the proof of concept and what it is and how we deliver it and what value it can bring and what are the deliverables or tasks we want to execute during that. So you start to build that kind of relation with the customer at a very early stage. Then that specific person will start to introduce you to the other members in the company, because those are the people who needs to be involved in the proof of concept. So you build a good relation, you build a good understanding of the customers, the environment, their day-to-day business, their processes, and you work with them for 60 days. And then when the actual handover happens, you are already in a good hand. And you just need to
Exactly.
move forward now to the next step. You know all those people. Now, let's get together. We need to put a plan for the next year, for the full year. You
Right.
already started a good portion of that plan. So you just
Yeah.
need to continue, add more now, because they saw the value. So they realize that, okay, and they start to think, okay, I have those challenges in my day-to-day business. I'll bring it to the table and see what they can bring to me. And that makes it easier to plan for a year.
Yeah. And there's also an opportunity to like establish your authority as a CSM that, hey, I actually know my stuff. So come time during our regular call cadence, whatever that might be, you would extract value out of our calls. So you don't have to
Absolutely.
convince them otherwise, like how we have to actually convince them in our first call, like, hey, I actually have some
Exactly.
value to share. So that's a really great advantage that you have. But of course, comes with a lot of more work as well. Awesome. Uh, I want to, this one, I'm always curious with all of my guests, is like on the habit piece. Everyone has like such different habits that they do in their day to day. So I'm really curious to know, Alqaq, like what are your habits that your day to day, from waking up in the morning, opening your laptop, to closing up, spending time with the family, things like that. What are you comfortable sharing? I would love to kind of know about that.
So multiple things. This is the first one.
Perfect. Yeah. Same.
So for me, from the moment I open my eyes, I start my day with a good cup of coffee
Nice.
and keep going all the day. Never stop. Um, I think one. So Do you want good habit or bad habit? Yeah, I don't know if you will consider this as a good or bad, but LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn all the time, on the mobile, on the laptop, on the iPad, anywhere. I just keep checking, keep reading, keep commenting, contacting people. So for me, it's a habit because I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. The other habit I have is, I like to be busy.
Okay.
I don't like just to sit doing nothing. Doing nothing is really bothering me. I feel like, it's okay. My brain cells are dying if I just sit doing nothing. So I keep myself busy all the time, every time, during the weekend, anytime. If I have any day, if I have an hour, I put something to do in that hour. Just like to be busy. I spend, okay, I have a full day or a full-time job, but I spend on my customer success Middle East hub and all the other interviews I do and the communications and then other things. I spend another 5 to 6 hours every day. So that's put them together. That's 13, 14 hours a day,
Exactly. Yeah.
keeping myself busy. The rest will be for sleep.
Gotcha. No, that's great. Awesome. Uh, okay. I'm so glad that we spoke about all the different like tactics and habits and actionable insights that you have. But it's not always like sunshine and rainbow. Even though we might use all the tactics and all that strategy that we talk about, like of course, like there are times that we fail, and so I'm curious to know if you're open to sharing like when was the time that you failed and what was the journey like and what came out of it.
Okay, assumption.
Oh gosh, yeah,
Using
tell me about it.
assume something and put it as a fact and start to build on top of it is crazy things. I've done it. I failed. I learned a lot from that. Cost me a lot of overnight working hours. But I just learned it the hard way. You should not assume anything when it comes to your customer relation and customer engagement. Everything needs to be documented and crystal clear, communicated and discussed with the customer. The moment you start to assume, there you will start to lose. So that was a true story.
No, totally. Like the funny story is that my very first job in an advertising industry, my very first manager, she always used to say this, and we used to kind of make fun of her about this. That she used to say that the one word that I hate is assumption, and then I kind of it just stuck to my head throughout the career, even though we used to make fun of her about that. But yeah, that is so true, especially in our role, like just assuming like, oh, you're going to do that, or oh, this is the contract that you want to have, or this is the agreed goal that you have, just things like that. There's so
Or
many opportunities to actually assume, but then you just have to be conscious of not doing that. That's such a good point.
exactly. And sometimes, from a discussion with a customer, you assume that their objectives is so and so.
Exactly, yeah.
And then when you start to discuss the objectives, it's completely different because they look at it from their perspective, not from my perspective. I look at it from a vendor, from a software, or from a software expert perspective. They look at it from the industry and from a challenge perspective. Two different
Right.
perspectives, and they will result in two different assumption or objectives. So I learned it. Honestly, it was very hard, but it's a lesson learned. And today, I even push my kids. Don't tell me I assume. Tell me I want to do 1, 2, 3. I did 1, 2, 3 because it's facts. There is no assumption. Because kids, if they start to learn to assume things, then
Yeah, teach
it's a
them
big
young. Yeah,
assumption.
totally.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that out.
it's a
All
pleasure.
right, we've actually come to the end of it. This has been such an interesting conversation, Alqaq. Like, it's really interesting on how the difference in setup that you have in your role at the moment and all the strategies and tactics that you use. I always want to end the pod with and keep it rolling with like
Mhm.
which CSM would you personally like me to have as a next guest in the pod?
Oh, okay. All right. Actually, there are a lot. There are
There
a
are,
lot.
there are indeed.
I don't feel guilty that, I recommended one for another, but, there is one person I admire her experience, her knowledge, her way of thinking. Personally, I interviewed her in my Monday guest interview.
Yeah.
Um, I worked with her we work in collaboration on an article that we posted on our hub.
Oh, nice.
Delia Vizan.
Oh, yes, I've seen her name.
Yeah,
Oh,
I do recommend to interview her. She has a great concept. She has a great knowledge, and she's always keen to talk more about customer success and
mhm.
explore more. So that's my and you asked me for one person. If you said like 5 or 5 person, I would give you 10.
No, totally. I'm definitely gonna reach out to her and dude, will mention that you recommended having her
Yeah,
as a guest. But thanks again. As we wrap up our discussion, Alkak, is there anything else you would like to share to our listeners? I know you have like uh, various projects that's going on. Any events, any initiatives that they should be on the lookout for?
yeah. So I'll be continue doing the Monday guest interview
Yeah, I
for
love that. I love
20.
reading that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
20. I already have my list of all the guests for next year.
Oh,
So,
wow.
this will continue. For the next year, there are a lot of surprises, but there is one I shared yesterday. So, in January,
Hmm.
I will be hosting the first customer success meetup in Jordan. I'm based in
No
Jordan,
way.
so I will
Yeah.
start from Jordan, and hopefully, if that event is a successful event, then I will take it into different countries in the Middle East.
Mhm.
Hopefully, that will lead to get or to do a regional event where we will have all the companies, all customer success leaders from all over to come and be part of that initiative. So that's my plan. We'll start from Jordan, move on to the Middle East, and then hopefully we will do one for the region.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm sure our listeners will be eagerly awaiting for those exciting developments.
Hopefully, yeah.
Uh, but thanks so much. I'll drop all the links in our episode notes so people can actually reach out to you or share things
Sure.
and get to know more about your projects and events, Alkag. But again, I want to express my gratitude to
My
you,
pleasure.
Alkag, for joining us today and sharing your incredible insights. It's really been an interesting conversation
Thank
and
you.
absolute pleasure having you on the show. So thank you for
Thank you.
coming in.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure is
And
mine.
thanks, appreciate it, appreciate it. Uh, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of It All Depends podcast. We hope you enjoyed
Thank you.
today's
Yeah,
discussion. I'm sure you did. But yeah, until then, take care and I'll see you soon. Cheers.
sure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank